came back from Switzerland, I was like, Dad, I really want to go to medical school. He said, why don't you do something more consistent, like get into the film business? And so then I was like, oh, okay.
Was it easy to get into? I mean, you don't come from much of a background.
I started working with a guy named Pete Romano, who's amazing. He's an underwater photographer. He shot The Abyss, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also, in conjunction with that, I worked a lot in the underwater space, being a diver.
You're behind the camera, you're with your mentor, you're doing underwater photography. I mean, why'd you leave that? What happened?
I had a really hard accident at work, and I fell out of a crane. After my accident, it was like my acupuncturist had just came in, fixed my injuries, and then also fixed my periods. And so I was like, oh my gosh, there has to be something to this medicine, right?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is Dan and Dante. Welcome to another episode of Middle-Aged Mess, the show for people who still understand the Dewey Decimal System. Okay, so today we are talking fertility, we're talking acupuncture, we're talking wellness, we're talking Dr. Beck Hoehn. Hi, doctor.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on your show.
So excited to have you. I'm really excited because your equipment is so amazing. I mean, you got like 4K going on there. I can hear you. This is unusual for me.
Hey.
Okay, so before we get into all of the stuff you do now, which is all cool and all exciting and fun to talk about, I want to talk about the Dr. Hoehn backstory and see where you came from and who you are and how you came into this very interesting profession you now occupy. So give me a little backstory.
I'm from an island in upstate New York, bordering Canada in the St. Lawrence River. And I was based out of New York City for a really long time. I did I was in the camera department for Local 600 for 25 years. And also in conjunction with that, I worked a lot in the underwater space, being a diver. And during my time as a photographer, I had a really hard accident at work, and I fell out of a crane. And the thing that got me back on my feet as fast as possible was acupuncture. So leading up to my accident, I was suffering from really debilitating, painful periods. And after my accident, it was like my acupuncturist had just came in, fixed my injuries, and then also fixed my periods. And so I was like, oh my gosh, there has to be something to this medicine, right?
Yeah.
And then as a result, I was so obsessed with it and really providing access to female camera assistants and camera people in the camera department at the time that I started getting more degrees in reproductive health, and then more advanced certification in reproductive research.
Can we go back for a second? So what's the island? Is it Long Island?
No, so it's in the Canadian border, and it's a series of islands called the Thousand Islands.
The Thousand Islands.
Yeah.
Oh, you had to get a lot of shit about that. Come on,
I
growing
did
up
get a lot of
in
shit
like a
about
salad dressing. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, you're the only person that knows what the dressing is.
I mean, it's not right next to the Roquefort Islands, I would imagine, right?
It's very close to the Roquefort Islands. Yes, right next door.
Are you Canadian?
I call myself practically Canadian. I wish I was Canadian. I'm a like Canadian light.
But you're so nice. I mean, I can always tell you're like kind of Canadian-ish. I mean, you're Canadian-esque. But that is America. It's New York?
Yeah, it's America. It's right in the border. So you could walk across the border in the wintertime because it was ice.
So there's just, how could you get off the island? I mean, you have to take a boat, a plane?
Yeah, so in the summertime, we all have our own boats. There's no cars on the island where I grew up. And then in the wintertime, we would just walk across the ice to get to school.
So school wasn't on the island? School was like on the mainland?
No, there's nothing on the island. There's just houses.
How many people are on the island?
Well, when I grew up, there was 30.
I mean, that sounds...
But in the wintertime, there was only 10.
Oh my God. I mean, you're like in the wilderness. That's awesome. I mean, that's probably...
Nobody's ever asked me about this. It's really funny.
I'm telling you, I'm
funny
different
it's coming
than everybody.
up on a podcast.
I think that's awesome. So there's 30, I want to hear about the island. So there's 30 people on the island? So was it like your family? How'd you guys end up on an island?
I don't know. I mean, my family's been there for 7 generations or 8 generations. So we just have always been there. I don't know what to tell you.
And of the 30 people on the island, were they all your relatives?
No, only a couple of families were.
Oh, okay.
Just cousins.
Was it weird growing up on an island with 30 people? Or was it like, I mean, that's just all you knew, so it didn't really matter, right?
I mean, it's really funny that you say that because for my whole childhood, I was just like, oh my God, I got to get off this thing. There's got to be more than this one town with this one traffic light on the mainland,
Eh,
right? And like people that don't even know what an avocado is. And then now that I'm older and middle aged, I'm like, Jesus, I would love to get back to that island. I
We
don't
would all want to, I want to grow up in the island. I want to go move back to the island. My God, that's such an interesting.
It's really nice. It's like you know how to drive a boat and to like I dove. That's like my whole life growing up. I just dove and swam and was around in boats in the woods
Well,
for
you started,
days.
when you gave me the 30 seconds of the first 40 years of your life, I heard about the diving and I was like, wait, I want to hear about that too. So, I mean, that's why you dove. You were on an island your whole life or your whole adult childhood life.
Yeah, yeah. So the wrecks in the St. Lawrence River, that's the mighty river where I'm from, is are some of the most prolific and well preserved in the northern climes, right? So it's the water is so cold that it preserves the timbers. And so you're able to get into some of the wrecks really easily.
Oh, I can imagine. And when did you start diving?
I started diving when I was like 15.
And I mean, everybody dove, everybody fished, everybody dove, right?
Everybody fishes. Not everybody dove. I just ended up being friends with a lot of the Coast Guard people on both sides of the border, and so I just dove with them a lot when I was a
I
kid.
was a diver for a little while.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I was
In
Patty.
LA or
No, so I went, well, yeah, I mean, in LA, I mean, but I got licensed in Israel. I went on this like
oh,
summer trip. Yeah, and it was like
wow.
some summer trip, and you could get licensed as a diver in the Sinai. Like it was,
Wow.
yeah, I know it was really, really
Must have
beautiful. It
been
was amazing stuff
beautiful.
down there. So I
Yeah.
love diving. I'm a big fan. I don't do it as much now that I'm an old man. And you continue doing that into your professional years, huh?
When I was in my 20s, yeah, so I worked for an organization called Save the River. It was an environmental organization, and I did grant work for creating dive sites to mitigate the amount of things that they just sink into the river to like old planes and things like that. So I created natural trails. And then it just kind of worked into I loved photography at the time. I was a big fan of Dave Dubélé from National Geographic. And so I just wanted to be him so bad. After doing a couple of years in New York City, I moved to the Caribbean for a while and was a dive master there.
I'm imagining it's somewhat idyllic, right? And I mean,
Very isolating.
isolating and you're running around and you're in the water and you're doing all these crazy things. And then you go and leave the island and you go to New York City. That had to be just a crazy culture shock for you, huh?
Oh, yeah, so before I went to New York City, I got a scholarship, to be an exchange student in Zurich, Switzerland, so I
Oh,
was
nice.
there. I left the island when I was 17, and I just never really went back after that.
Well, so when you get to Zurich and you see like, I don't know, people, more than 30
People.
people, like in a
Yeah,
building, like in a
yeah,
restaurant,
it's crazy.
did it throw you? I mean, were you
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Well, I didn't speak the language, and I was just there by myself. Yeah, it was crazy.
how long were you there for?
I was just there for a year. I mean, it was just, it was just I was really young and I was there for a year and then I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll just move to New York,
Yeah, whatever, something to do.
work it
You
out."
know, you're
Yeah.
bored. And
Yeah.
when you got back to New York City, so I mean, did you ever think about going back to the island? Was there ever like a thought of maybe that's a good place before
Every
like this
damn
week?
day. Every damn day.
I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
And what'd you do in New York City? What was happening in New York City?
So I was in the started working on movies there. So I was just in the film business and just started working in the camera department.
So were you doing underwater filming or you were
No, I started working underwater when I started working in the Caribbean. And then when I moved to LA, I started working with a guy named Pete Romano, who's amazing. He's an underwater photographer. He shot The Abyss,
Oh,
which is
wow.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he kind of took me under his wing and I started working with him. It was amazing.
So I grew up in LA. I've been in LA. And so everybody in LA, every kid dreams of being in the entertainment business because they see it and it's real, and it's relatable and it's like attainable because like, they go to school with some kid who's on a sitcom or their
Yeah.
their friends' parents are directors. And I imagine there's like a little bit of that in New York too, but LA's really you grew up on an island with 30 people. Like, how did you even concept
Oh,
the
yeah.
idea of going into the entertainment industry? How did that become a real possibility for you?
Oh, this is a great question. Thanks for asking me this. I really, there's nothing to do on an island in the middle of the Canadian border when you're a little kid. And so my dad was obsessed with movies. And so we would watch, I would watch about, I feel like 2 or 3 movies a night almost. Like it was just part of my world so much.
Nothing else to do on the island, I guess, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
And at the time I came back from Switzerland, I was like, "Dad, I really wanna go to medical school." And he was already in the profession, and he was like, "If you go to medical school, I'm gonna break both of your legs. Like, you cannot do that. Why don't you do something more
Wait, why would I mean,
regular?"
that's usually, like, the huge
I know,
goal to be a doctor or a
I know.
lawyer. What's wrong with your dad? What's going on
He
with
said,
him?
"Why don't you do something more consistent, like get into the film business?" And so then I was like, "Oh, okay." And at the time, I loved making images. Like I've just always loved photography, and I think that movies and back in the day, how movies were made, that's just what shaped our lives and our culture,
Yeah,
right? Like
totally.
everything about what we do is defined by this really beautiful art form. And I just wanted to be a part of it so badly. Like I would have done anything to be behind the camera. I loved it so much.
Was it easy to get into? I mean, you doesn't come from much of a
No.
back yeah, right? There's no background for you, like, Jesus Christ. There's no way some girl from a 30-person island is getting into the movie business. It's impossible.
No, yeah, I know. And actually, it's really funny because this was in the 90s. I don't mean to age myself, but this was in the 90s in New York City. And we just didn't have female camera assistants. Like there
Yeah,
weren't female photographers. There were not females were really not on set,
right,
right? So it was really funny. I took my camera test and somebody rigged the test to rig the cameras wrong. Like you have to check out all the cameras
right.
because they knew that I was going to be there. But I had studied so much. I had looked at every single manual and like stared at it. And I was just obsessed. I would tell my family about it and everything that I found out that the camera was put together wrong. And so
So did they do that to
just,
fuck with you because they didn't want you on? Oh, they did.
yeah.
Here's the island chick. Let's make sure she
Yeah.
doesn't get the job. Kidding?
Oh my God. Yeah, right. I know it was like my second day in New York City, and I had just gotten this test, this camera checkout test. And I was like, holy shit, this is really happening for me. I can't believe this.
Wait, were you 18 years old
And
at the time?
no, I was 19.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to have
Oh
balls to
yeah.
tell them, "Hey, the camera's not set up right," right? You had to be a little scared.
Well, I just asked a question. I was just like, hey, this doesn't look right, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. They figured it out. Like, oh, okay, we better not do that for this one.
Yeah, and you're hired. We'll see you tomorrow at 8 AM.
Yeah.
I'll put you on the call sheet.
Yeah. It was
Okay, so you have
incredible.
your dream of being in the movie business. You're behind the camera. You're with your mentor. You're doing underwater photography. I mean,
Yeah.
why'd you leave that? What happened?
Well, after my accident, I was pretty I'd been in for a couple of years at that point, and really I liked it and it was great. And then the whole industry went to digital, which just took it leached the life out of
Mm,
it for me.
mm.
There was just no you anybody could do the digital job, and like it wasn't like a craft anymore to me.
Oh, wow,
And I
that's
also
interesting.
knew that I was physically not going to be able to do the job in my 40s, right? So the accident was the perfect intersection of my life, really.
What was the accident? What happened?
Oh, I fell out of a crane while I was rigging a camera on.
Oh, whoa. That's a bad
Yeah.
day. That's a bad
Yeah.
day. Okay.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, this was before all the tragic I mean, there's been tragic accidents since the beginning of time in the film industry, but,
yeah.
in the past couple of years, there's just been some really just very deeply emotional, tragic accidents that are awful about working conditions.
So you have this accident, and then you had this remarkable experience with acupuncture, sounds like.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. How'd that
Yeah,
happen?
it was really transformative. I actually found a really great mentor. His name was Arno Yap. He was Dutch Indonesian. And he would just do one treatment. He would work on me for one treatment, and I would just feel so restored and so renewed in that one time that I was like, there's got to be something to this medicine. Albeit it was partly because of Dr. Yap as well at the time, but I was just so obsessed with how people with limited access could get better, right?
Yeah.
In terms of interventions.
I've actually had good experiences with acupuncture as well, but I think there's just a general stigma with acupuncture about, is it real? Does it really do anything? And did you have any of that? Or I mean, because I mean here, look, here in LA and in Vegas where I live, I mean, there's tons of acupuncture. It's very well
Yeah.
accepted. But I don't know if it's so accepted in when you get outside of the major cities, or even when you're in the major cities, there's a question of like, what is this really doing?
Right, and this is actually a great lead in to how amazing acupuncture is actually. Thank you for acknowledging that, and to your point, we do definitely live in a bubble here. We're in California, it's like as accepted as Chipotle, right?
Well,
Um,
I don't know, the last couple of years, Chipotle,
okay, so maybe not Chipotle, but,
but yeah, for sure.
Taco Bell, whatever. But I will say this, there has been so many great emerging, RCTs, randomized clinical trials around the efficacy of acupuncture, so much so that actually in response to the opioid crisis, Medicare considers acupuncture a covered benefit for pain management. That
Hold on a
is
sec. I
huge.
can get acupuncture covered with by my insurance?
Through Medicare, yeah.
Hello. Calling up Dr. Yap this afternoon. Let's
Right.
go.
Yeah.
Work me out a
There are
little
some
bit.
caveats to it, so I don't wanna get you too excited, and we can
Oh,
go into those nuances if you ever feel
I'm
like
gonna
you need to talk about
I'm
that,
gonna
but
call you after the show.
yeah, right. So in terms of it being so powerful like that, it takes a major agency, government agency, to use something like acupuncture. And in terms of that effectiveness, the other major payers, in terms of insurance companies, are really starting to toe the line, right? So
Right.
it is becoming more and more widely adopted as a really great intervention for particularly pain management, right? In terms of not just prescribing a pill or putting there's no lifestyle adjustments, there's no other modifications that we're doing to a person, we're just prescribing, right? So this has been a really great experience for acupuncture and holistic medicine because we're really starting to look at the whole person for the first time in America in terms of healthcare and going beyond just prescribing for an intervention.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, look, I talk about being the stigma of acupuncture. I think it maybe probably still exists a little bit, but not anywhere near where it used to be. And I know that, like, I've seen traditional Chinese medicine and all kinds of alternative medicine, and with obviously the wellness industry coming in these last 20 years, that it has become much more widely accepted. And people are also willing to, I think, try different things with their health. Whereas when we were growing up, it was like you go to the doctor, you get a pill, and you call it a day. Whereas now I think people are very open to it. And when you first went to do it, what was your stance on it? Like, what did you believe acupuncture was going to do?
I mean, I had no expectation, right? Like I grew up on an island, I was a diver, I was always really healthy.
Right.
I didn't know, I had no exposure to medicine except for my father really, like but we didn't go
Who
to
hated
we didn't.
doctors? Your dad who hated doctors was your only exposure to
Right.
medicine.
But
Yeah.
like we didn't go to doctors, right? We
Right.
like ate food and lived our lives. Like I don't know, it was just way different. So like by the time I got to a point where I had a major event, well that was my biggest major event in terms of health. I was like willing to try anything.
Mm.
Like I was really open. I don't know, maybe I'm just different than other people, but I had another camera person say, "Oh, this person really fixed me when I had an injury." And all I wanted to do was get back to work at the time. And that's what all of us want, right?
Right.
Like all film workers, they just want to go back to work. Like they don't want to sit around,
Yeah, no,
right?
exactly. So you have the one session and you
Yeah.
walk out of there feeling like a champ, and you
Yeah.
said, all right, fuck the entertainment industry. I'm going to go start poking people with needles.
Pretty much.
I
Yeah.
love it. That's the way it should be. You're
Yeah.
ready to go. You just take a turn.
Yeah.
Was it literally that quick? Did you decide that's it? I want to do this?
I mean, I did a lot of soul searching. I worked with an organization to like figure out like, oh crap, I'm gonna get another job outside of photography, which is like that's had been what I had been doing for 20 years, right? So I was just like, what am I gonna do differently? And so yeah, so I worked with an organization and I researched a ton of different careers and I shadowed them and I hung out with them and I just decided to go to acupuncture school,
Right on.
which was pretty aggressive. I
How
don't know if I would recommend it for most people. It's
how
like
long
I've been studying for 10 years, so
how long was school? How long was acupuncture school?
my master's was like 3 years, and then I got my doctorate, which was another 2 or 3.
So can I tell you how cool I am with acupuncture? So I had a friend, actually it was a friend's daughter. This is probably 15, 20 years ago, that she was going to acupuncture school. There's one in Santa Monica.
Yeah, that's the one I went
Oh,
to.
that's the one you went to. Okay, so she went to
Yeah.
that one about 20 years ago. And I said to her, God damn it, I'm going to be your first patient. The day after you graduate, you gonna come into my house, you're gonna take care of me. And she's been my acupuncturist for the last
Who is
15-ish years.
that? What's her name? Yeah, she was like a clinic director for a long time there. She's awesome.
Yeah, no, she's great. Well, I was her first patient.
That's
I was
amazing.
patient alpha for her.
I loved her.
I don't know
She
who was
actually showed me the ropes.
that's amazing. I don't know who was more scared, me or her. Okay, so you get out of acupuncture school, and now you were set on this was going to be your world.
Yeah. Yeah, at the time I thought I was going to be a clinician for a really long time. That was in 2014. I graduated with my master's and hung my shingle, started my practice. And then at the time, I was really still serving the film industry community because I'm a big crew member supporter. And I was seeing a lot of people with the same conditions that I had on set, and in particularly because my community was the female camera assistants. I was like, wow, nobody should suffer this much. And the only intervention we had at the time was just going on birth control pills.
If you get out of med school, you go to a hospital, you go to a practice. Does acupuncture have the same type of thing, or do you just have to basically set up a shingle and rent out a retail space and go? Like, how'd you do it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, most of the acupuncturists are solo practitioners. There's not a lot of space in the hospital setting. At this time, I mean, you can work for the VA hospital for sure, and they have a great pain management
But not back when you got
department.
out of school. When you got out of school, there wasn't that stuff, I don't think. Or was there?
Not as much. I mean, it's becoming more in the forefront now. And there's different opportunities. But at the time we were all really trained and tooled to just open our own practices.
Okay. And that's what you did. And you just went back to your community of camera people and the entertainment world to start.
Yeah. So I started working with them a lot. And then I found that a passion of mine was reproductive health. And so I got additional certifications in reproductive health, and then just decided to go back to school to get my doctorate in reproductive medicine and research.
So is that still like a function of acupuncture? It's a completely different discipline entirely.
No, I actually still use all of the modalities and interventions that we would with traditional Asian medicine. So I use and incorporate herbal medicine, acupuncture, cupping, gua sha, all of the other faculties of the medicine in supporting reproductive health.
So I don't know that I'm going to explain this or even ask this question correctly because I'm so unfamiliar with everything medical. I mean, and I, like your dad, I hate doctors. I don't go anywhere near them. But I think there's like acupuncture is kind of like a Far Eastern traditional Chinese kind of discipline, right? The reproductive health is a little more mainstream Western medicine.
No, I mean, I studied reproductive acupuncture, which
Okay,
is
got it.
yeah, it's just a specialty within the umbrella of what we call traditional Asian medicine. Reproductive acupuncture is a specialty. It's like saying dermatology or podiatry or pain
I
management.
got
It's
it.
just a different specialty.
And you primarily deal with women who are older.
I do. I actually, the demographic I work with is pretty much, I would say 30 to 45,
Okay,
even 50 now. We have a 50-year-old delivering in 2 weeks right now.
is that good?
It's great. I mean, it's amazing. I had 3 miracle babies this year, and, they were all over the age of 40.
Oh wow.
They're conceiving and delivering, and I was like, "If these people get pregnant, I'm taking the rest of the year off." So
That's a bonus. You deserve it. So, I mean, people are getting pregnant older. I mean, the whole culture of pregnancy, I think over these last 20, 30 years has changed with the millennials coming up. They've got a different idea about things. Is that why you chose to go with people over 40? Just because that's where the world is going? Or was there something specific to, that age group that you thought was more rewarding?
yeah, I don't know, your patient base really just, like, ends up, like, you find a patient base that, like, they just they start to get attracted to you. I don't know what it is, like, how we become the medicine like that, but that's a very common thing in acupuncture, right? So, all of a sudden, you just start working with patients in a certain demographic or a certain condition, and then you keep studying and attracting the energy to it,
Right,
right?
right. So when you're dealing with reproductive health and and acupuncture, are people coming to you who are having problems with reproduction? Or they're just coming to you for standard care, or like how does it work for you?
Generally speaking, I mean, I see like out of a patient base of 60, I will see like 3 pain management patients. So
Okay.
most of the people that I serve are trying in the trying to conceive space. So
Oh, so like
um,
IVF and
yeah, so I do a lot of IVF support as well. So it could because we know that when you do reproductive acupuncture alongside IVF as an adjunct therapy, that the chances of your IVF treatment working are going to be incredibly more successful.
right. So how's the political climate these days affecting your business, if at all, or is it?
Well, I live again, I mean, if I'm completely honest, I live in California,
Right,
so
right. Right. Completely immune, isolated from everything that
this
goes on in the world.
This exactly. This is, like, why I'm terrified of, like, moving back to even moving back to the island in that liberal bubble, like, I don't even know what that would be like in another, state at this point, but, yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's a tragedy, and I really hope we get through it as a nation.
I wonder if so look, obviously in California, people are very liberal. They're very open to new ideas and new concepts, and usually things start in California and end up on the East Coast like 10 or 15 years later. Do you think that could you practice in Texas? Could you practice in Mississippi? Is it possible? Were people open to it out there? If you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a great Texas acupuncture board, and there is one in Mississippi as well.
So it is accepted in places where it's not quite so
For sure.
progressive.
I think one of the challenges of reproductive acupuncture specifically is or even acupuncture is that and this is really changing over the past couple of years. But people see it as only for pain management, and so they don't understand the range and the power of the medicine. So once we start rising as integrative health providers, and we see this all the time, people are looking beyond Western conventions to look into other ways to really solve their healthcare problems. The specialties will start to emerge and become more prominent.
Yeah. So look, I know nothing about the reproductive health world. Zero. In fact, let me give you a quick story about how little I know about my first child's born, my daughter. So this was 20 some odd years ago. And so naturally I'm sitting in the room with the video camera because I want, film footage of my future Olympic athlete or Academy Award winner. And so
As one does.
yeah, of course. And so she pops out, and so I immediately start filming everything. They take her and like, but there's kind of a weird energy going on in the room. Like I don't really understand, but there's my daughter, and she's in the bassinet or whatever, and they're working on it. I'm filming, and the nurse taps me on the shoulder and says, "Sure, you really shouldn't be filming." And I said, "Well, why not? That's my kid." She goes, "Yeah, we're trying to revive your baby right now." So she was born with the cord around her neck and blue, and Apgar maybe one. I'm like taking a picture like a blueberry of a child. I had no idea what was going on. Needless to say, it was at the greatest, the greatest reproductive hospital in the world, Cedars-Sinai. 20 people show up in the room in 10 seconds. They take care of her. She's perfect. Everything's cool. And I'm just sitting there going, okay. So I was, basically taking pictures of a baby who was dying. But I mean, so I'm a little bit slow on all of this stuff, right? But
Right.
but that
And that's understandable.
but
Yeah.
that being said, being a very typical dude. So tell me about like what's the suite of services? Like, I understand you do acupuncture, but when somebody comes in to work with you, like what are the different things that you do with them and that you can offer as part of the range of treatments?
So we treat a lot of different conditions: endometriosis, PCOS, uterine fibroids, and then to your point about being an adjunct therapy for IVF. But generally speaking, it's almost like a whole systems medicine. Not to coin one of our researchers' phrases, but we it's very comprehensive care, right? So we look at really the whole person and what their context is between heaven and earth, what that their environment looks like, what their nutritional interventions need to do to improve, like what we need to employ. And we do things like stress management techniques. It's a really life redesign, right? So there's the physical part of it, which is the acupuncture and the herbal medicine. And then there's the counseling and coaching part. And then, so it's very, very comprehensive in terms of care. And somebody's looking out for you once a week and really charting your progress and making sure that you're going in the right direction.
And do you do this all in person or is it online? Do you have clients all over the world or is it just in the Southern California?
I do. I have two companies. So my clinical practice is in Los Angeles, as we kind of chit chatted about, And then I also work in the telehealth space. So I have patients all over the world that I work with. And then I also create a lot of education, which is a big kind of soapbox for me, is that I think it's really important to have informed choices around your healthcare. So I always produce educational pieces for people.
Got it. And your sweet spot is kind of you said the 30 to 50-year-old pregnancy, or you work with everybody, I would imagine, right?
Yes, yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do people get in touch with you? Where do they find you?
They can find me. I have 2 websites, so it's just a little confusing, but, there's one called drbeckowen.com, and then my clinical practice is Mighty River Wellness, and that's in Toluca Lake, as we had spoken about.
Okay, awesome. Well, for a girl from an island of 30 people, Dr. Hoehn, you're doing quite a few things, man. I mean, it's a pretty cool life you've lived. I mean, working in the
Yeah, it's
entertainment
pretty fun.
industry, underwater photography, you're in California doing reproductive health and acupuncture. I mean, you've got it all, man. I mean, you're an exciting woman.
Thank you, likewise.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I appreciate it, but I don't know if it's true. Okay, so find you on Dr. Beck Hoehn. That's DrBeckhoehn.com.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm
Wow, good
good.
job.
I'm good. And Mighty River Wellness?
Yeah.
All right. Dr. Hoehn,
Alright.
thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. We'll see you next time on Middle Age Mess.